Dear beloved Creator, ubiquitous, without, in every atom, in everything, and within every cell of our body. This life force exists in all that is created by our Creator, never to be duplicated, only to be awed by, graced by, marveled at. We are here to acknowledge the love and the miracles of creation, to honor the gifts given to us on this plane of existence, this 3D reality with all its flaws and imperfections, and with all its beauty. We know there is evil too, and we are grateful to finally see it for what it is, a jealous and futile attempt to destroy the magnificence and perfection of your creation. When we see as much as we need to see or handle, then we know the tide has turned, and we can return our land and our undivided people to their rightful place, humankind as you intended. Then we know we can move forward with our innate intelligence and true wisdom and blind the darkness and the evil with our knowing and our light. And we are here for that. And we are gathered here for that. And for that, we are grateful. And so it is.
Hello, my name's Ron Vroman. I'm the old white man talking head for the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I just spent over an hour talking to a very intelligent, I like her, knowledgeable woman. And in that conversation, which was really good, she's an excellent wordsmith. She can really twist words around until you don't know which way's up. And this is to unwind some of that and get it down on a recording for our Article 3, Amendment 7, Civilian Common Law Court of Record. This stuff is getting deep. She claims knowledge of Article 3 courts on California, Oklahoma, Arizona, and Florida. I am going to have to really try and locate those. We had to terminate the conversation. It was just too long, and I'll have to call her back. However, we're stuck on provenance, and we're stuck on word art. And just because something was said and written down in a book someplace does not make it true. It's still bullshit, even if it has supporting evidence. The supporting evidence can be a lie. And I want to bring this part to our attention right now. Oregon, that is a specific place, and it is an independent nation, and it happened in 1859, and there are no original records available anywhere that anybody has that will show us that that actually happened. People want to talk fantasy, and that's what she was doing. She is such a wordsmith that she will turn things around, and everything she says is true from her point of view, and it's all paja in Spanish, meaning straw. It has no value as food. It's not there. For example, we agreed that there are jurisdictions, the soil and land jurisdiction, the water jurisdiction, and the air jurisdiction. Those are three separate and distinct places. we are on the land and soil, and that is a geographic place, and it has a jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction is men and women on that. That is who we are. Then they superimpose through the Bar Association, the British Accreditation Registry, that group. I'm not sure about all of that. It's off Oregon, and I don't care. I'm working on Oregon through the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. That's my job. But she likes to talk about worldwide and Vatican and, oh my God, the knowledge she has, or misinformation that she's putting forth. I don't know the difference. But it sounds good, and she's a pleasant person to talk to, so I enjoy the conversation. She seeks concurrence, I think it is. She's one of those people that when she talks, she says, right? Cliff High does that too, seeking concurrence. And I say no, and she rolls right on like I didn't say no. She's good. So what we have is provenance. And all that we have is that. And we have to hang on to the exact way it is and not get off in the weeds, because when you get off in the weeds, you get off into speculation and assumption. And that's where the British Accreditation Registry, the Vatican, Washington District of Columbia, London, and all of that bullshit gets into it and confuses the jurisdiction of men and women on the land and soil. And that's all we should really, for the most part, give a shit about, because we have a representative form of government that we're supposed to be able to function through. They stole it. It now becomes a possession of pirates. We know exactly when the piracy happened on this iteration that we're talking about, and that happened after Oregon became a state, 1859, whatever, February maybe. Between then, when Buchanan was president, he signed the paper. We can find a copy of that. And the delegation from Oregon returned to Oregon with our statehood documents. And a guy named Matthew Deedy wrote 2 books saying he saw them. They're histories of Oregon paid for out of the Oregon State Treasury. It's supposed to be legitimate, and we can prove that it's a lie because we know that the 13th Amendment was in all of the constitutions and statehood documents from 1819 to 1859. But in 1864, when Deedy published his book, he said that the 13th Amendment tona was not in the statehood documents. He wrote it right in both books and published. So that becomes the rule of the de facto government on Oregon. They started out, when he published those 2 books, on a lie. That we can prove. So original jurisdiction is in the statehood documents. They will prove one way or another. The statehood documents are supposed to be found in the Secretary of State's office, and that should be in the archives, and they refuse to show them. Like 5 or 6, I haven't counted up all the secretaries of state, even more when you count the undersecretary of state or deputy secretary of state like Jural and Richard Weil. And the current one's name is Michael, last name won't come right now, formerly of the Treasury Department. Original jurisdiction is in the provenance that you can prove in the documents available that can trace the actual ownership of the jurisdiction that men and women claim. We claim we have a constitution that started here and made this area part of the United States of America as one of the states, an independent nation. We can support that with the documents and the evidence that we have, but we cannot prove it because the repository of Oregon's statehood documents is in 2 places. One in DC, should be Library of Congress. There should be a copy of the contract there, and there should be a copy of the contract in Salem. And if there is no copy of the contract, there should be a document in lieu of the original. There should be a repository of the contract that changed the land and soil jurisdiction of the Pacific Northwest Territory from that jurisdiction of the United States out of Washington District of Columbia before they had the conflagration that was stopped by the armistice of Grant and Lee. That bunch transformed Oregon into a state, one of the several states among the other 32 states, Minnesota and so forth. So that is original jurisdiction for us on the land and soil jurisdiction, where we can be what we're actually supposed to be in the laws of nature and nature's God. That's where we are. Now, they want to rob that jurisdiction from us, and they have succeeded very well. And it has been going on Oregon specifically for 110 years, no, 115 years since 1910. Except we are no longer deceived. Now, it's to the benefit of all of those that we have gone to the trouble and effort to do, which is make an Article 3, Amendment 7, Civilian Common Law Court of Record, which is supported by grand juries, which is supported by legitimate trials, all public, all published, no secrecy, no bullshit. Now, we've done that on Oregon 6.5 years, 9 grand juries, and 9 legitimate Article 3, Amendment 7 trials. And when I was talking to her, she said they had done that in California, Oklahoma, Arizona, and Florida. She took those off the top of her head. She said 6, and she came up with those 4 in conversation. And it wasn't a big point, and we're just catching up. We haven't spoken in quite a while. All winter's gone on while we haven't spoken. So what we're getting really close to, in my estimation, was I called her because of Aegianon's, what would you call that? His resignation from Rusa, I guess. She had it. She had seen it. She knew exactly what was going on. We agreed on a bunch of stuff. She's in total agreement on Ex parte Milligan and Article 1, Section 1. That's pretty astounding. And she seems to think she's got that going on 6 states. I could care less about all the other stuff that she's talking about. And boy, does she have a gang of stuff to talk about, forming banks and calling forth the Vatican. And oh my God, the amount of gold that's involved. And it's it's an amazing trilogy. But in any case, where we are is exactly where Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly is. There's no rebuttal, and we're all in agreement. How do we bring sheriffs who presumably their own best interest is for them to continue doing what they're doing, but because it's been successful for 115 years, and why rock the boat? And they're already intertwined with the Oregon State Bar, and the Oregon State Bar has to be removed from Oregon and the Constitution and all forms of government and law. They've been knitting themselves into it since they formed a bar, which is the Oregon State Bar, on Oregon. I think that was in 25 or 35. I don't care which. But they have one that's in existence. They illegitimately wrote it into their de facto constitution that they present us. And they've been doing stuff like that since we know of for sure 1910. And all the sheriffs are party to it. There's another thing that we disagree on. She says sheriffs are part of the territory that is known as counties, and the counties count to make a state, and that's wrong. There were 17 or however many counties on Oregon when Oregon became a state. And it's written into the Constitution how they're going to draw and make up states, counties, after Oregon became a state. And counties are subdivisions of the state. Counties can be made by erasing or placing a line anywhere they can figure out to do it. Now, take a look at the names on Oregon. Was not Curry the name of a general on the Union Army? And what about Grant and Sherman? Now, those names, however many of them there are all part of a federal, non-constitutional, without provenance form of government that we've had on all of the other territory other than California and Oregon 2 states out here by themselves. All the land in between us and Minnesota and Missouri is all territory. They divided it up into federal Blue Coat territory, Army, U.S. Army Lieber Code territory, and it's not us. We are in another jurisdiction. You got to watch the word art. They will change what we are into something called federal and then say, right? And if you not agreement or you don't do anything, you've agreed and they take you down this path of piracy. Don't go there. You don't have to. Ignore that jurisdiction and have the courage and strength of your own convictions that you are who you say you are and you're not going to back down. Be careful. I made that decision and then went and spent 20 days in Pat Garrett's county jail. I wouldn't back down, didn't make a shit to them, guilty and go to jail. That's their jurisdiction. If you're in it, they can do that to you. Now examine what happens if you refuse that jurisdiction. There's 3 things that that can cause a man or a woman or their progeny to lose their freedom and be incarcerated. One is arrest. First person knows whoever it was broke the law and needed to be arrested. That's what we have cops for, civilians on patrol. That's what the sheriff deputies on patrol are supposed to do. They are supposed to protect us from the bad guys. People do bad things and they have to be arrested. That's a civilian arrest. The next way you can have an arrest is a cop knows something and he goes to a judge and he gets a wet ink signature on a warrant to go arrest this person. First person singular of people, not the fiction. So that's the second way that you can lose your freedom and be incarcerated. The third way is for grand jury. That's the way we use. We get a grand jury together. She said they had grand juries on those 4 states too, but you get a grand jury together and you do the process from A all the way to finish. So we're at finish. Finish is those that we have elected, allegedly, as we're not sure that we have a legitimate Secretary of State functioning out of Salem. But supposing we do, then supposing that the DPSST and the elections recorder on each county that has a sheriff actually did the paperwork correctly, and the sheriff really wants to be a real sheriff supporting and upholding and defending me and you for our peace, safety, and happiness. That's the function. Now, if they don't want to do that and they want to support the Salem for-profit oligarchy, there's no way that I know of to, without violence, change their thought pattern and make them do something different. They have to want to be the ones that are going to uphold and defend and support our peace, safety, and happiness. We have 36 of those on Oregon right now. We have 38 prosecutors, and not one of them has a proper oath to the proper constitutions with the laws of nature and nature's God included. Not one. Those are really poor odds. Imagine the arrogance of the people in Article 1, Section 1 of Oregon's Constitution in a social compact that actually think they can bring about a de jure form of government. I think it's totally legitimate and the proper way to do it. So we have to uphold our provenance. We have to uphold our individual belief that we have unalienable rights and not just privileges of a U.S. citizen, and that we're going to uphold and defend and protect our unalienable rights through a representative form of government using our constitutions, the correct ones, the legitimate ones, and to do the job properly. Now, what part of that do the 36 sheriffs that we have now find objectionable? I'd like to know that, because we have to have the provenance of original jurisdiction. You have to be able to say, I am no longer deceived, and I will have what's unalienable to me. Got to be able to do that individually, you, nobody else. You can't join a Republican Party and gain the authority through them to be somebody. You have to be who you are. You have to make the stand all the way. So this is probably a recruiting video. I need like 30 to 50 people on each one of the counties to be able to confront on a daily basis their sheriff and tell them what the people want. And you can find me at www.orsja.org. And William always puts up my email at the end of this. And I yield.
They do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying. And then he jumps out of the car. And he's got both his hands up. And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, just shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead. With his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, shot him 3 more times.